Hi, it's Rudy Jones of Palmetto State Baseball.com. It's Thursday, February 27th, and I just want to do a little video preview of the upcoming weekend in college baseball in the state of South Carolina. All the state's 33 teams will be in action, and 21 of them will be at home. So there'll be a game going on somewhere near you, and if the weather's good, get out and enjoy it. Well, let's take a look at the schedule. First, we'll start with Friday based on game times, and we'll go into more what's going on the rest of the weekend. At 11 o'clock on Friday, Erskine begins the weekend by playing a doubleheader against Georgian Court at Greer Field in Due West. Georgian Court will be playing his first ever games. They just formed a baseball program a few years ago, and this is the first time on the field. So the Flying Fleet should be favored to win those games. Also on Friday, we have Southern Wesleyan at Shorter at 1 o'clock. Bob Jones is at Covenant over in Tennessee. Well, Lookout Mountain, Georgia, at 2 o'clock. North Greenville is at Belmont Abbey at 3. UAS Lowell is at USC Upstate, also at 3. Wagner is at Winthrop at 3 o'clock. Creighton is at College of Charleston at 4. Now, one of Creighton's assistants is Mark Kingston, the former head coach at South Carolina. He moved over to the Omaha school, and of course, he'll be going up against a team coached by his predecessor at South Carolina, Chad Holbrook. Eastern Michigan is at Presbyterian at 4 o'clock. They'll actually play 4 games this weekend, playing a doubleheader on Saturday, by the way. Rutgers is at Coastal Carolina. USC Aiken is at Claflin. Bellarmine is at Charleston Southern. That's at 5 o'clock. All the times are on PalmettoStateBaseball.com, by the way. Bluefield is at Columbia International at 5. Newberry is at Limestone at 5. Yale is at the Citadel at 5 o'clock. Lemoyne is back in Spartanburg for the second time in a week, playing at Wofford at 5:30. They played in the One of Spartanburg Inc. Classic last week at USC Upstate and Presbyterian. Lander is at Flagler at 6 o'clock. Lenore-Ryan is at Coker at 6 o'clock. The Cobras have a 10-game winning streak, and Lenore-Ryan is a pretty good team this year. It ought to be a great game down there in Hartsville. Great weekend series, in fact. USC Beaufort is at Georgia Southwestern at 6 o'clock. And wrapping up the first day is South Carolina at Clemson at 7 o'clock, Doug Kingsmore Stadium. I'll talk more about that series later on. On Saturday, this is the first game for these particular series. Many of them are doubleheaders, and some of the games I mentioned on Friday will conclude with a doubleheader on Saturday. But let's go. Benedict is at Lane at 1 o'clock, doubleheader. Davis and Elkins is at Anderson for a doubleheader at 1. Florence Darlington Tech and USC Lancaster square off in the Region 10 game, doubleheader at 1 o'clock. Those two teams share first place with USC Union at 2-1 in region play after 1 week. Francis Marion is at Young Harris in a doubleheader. Young Harris is a strong team. Gaston College is at USC Sumter in another Region 10 doubleheader. Morris is at Spartanburg Methodist for a doubleheader at 1 o'clock. We have USC Salkehatchie at USC Union at 1 o'clock, another Region 10 doubleheader. And Voorhees is at Tougaloo down in Mississippi at 1 o'clock. Now, one game I did not mention is going on at Ford Field. It's actually a 3-game series. Michigan State is going to play 8 games at Ford Field in Greenville between this weekend and March the 9th. And there's a game Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday at noon against Harvard. Again, it's Ford Field. If you're just a baseball fan in general, don't have a particular state rooting interest, that's for you. Game 1 of Clemson-Carolina I mentioned was at 7 o'clock at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. On Friday, it will be broadcast or streamed actually on ACC Network Extra. And both schools should have audio of those games and in their radio networks as well. On Saturday, they move over to Ford Field at Greenville. They play at 1 o'clock, or 1:30, and it will be streamed on SEC Network Plus. South Carolina is the home team this year at that designated neutral site. And as far as radio, double check to make sure that there's not a conflict between Clemson or South Carolina men's basketball. If there's no conflict, it'll be on the radio networks. If there is a conflict, both schools have a audio stream going on at their respective website, ClemsonTigers.com and GamecocksOnline.com. The third game of the series will be Sunday at 5 o'clock at Founders Park in Columbia. Once again, it will be on SEC Network Plus, and the respective schools should have their audio streams as well as radio network going on. One reason for Carolina playing at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, that's pretty odd. They do play one other game that time later this year. I believe it's Ole Miss maybe. But South Carolina's women are playing their final home game of the season, women's basketball, of course, earlier in the day at Colonial Life Arena, and I would suspect that they did not want to conflict with the home finale for the women. Now, looking back at that Clemson-Carolina series, I see a few things that can be keys for each team. For Clemson, I think they need to get Cam Canarella going. Now, he's hitting like 269 or so. That's not bad at all. But I know that they're expecting more out of him, and as one of the top draft prospects for the 2025 Major League Draft, I'm sure he expects more out of himself. So I'm sure Clemson will try to get him going. I think the Tigers will try to challenge South Carolina on the base paths. USC has not thrown out a base runner or base stealer from the catcher position yet this year. Now, there were a couple of caught stealings in Tuesday night's game against Gardner-Webb, but both of them were the results of pickoffs by the pitcher. So I think Clemson's going to try to put the pressure on Carolina, extra bases, steals, things like that. Third key for Clemson, I think, is to keep South Carolina in the park. I don't think the Gamecocks are as dependent on home runs as they were sometimes during the Kingston era, but I know it's still a big part of their offense. They've hit, I think it's 12, 14 home runs, whatever it is, 12 home runs, I think, in 9 games. And so I know that they would love to do that, but I think Clemson keeping Carolina in the park will be a plus. How about keys for South Carolina? I think they need to get Talmadge LaCroix going. He has struggled so far on offense this year as far as his batting average. He's had several games where he hit the ball pretty solidly, but has happened to find a glove or an outfielder was able to run it down. But another couple of feet either way could have been in the gap. But again, they weren't, so he's been struggling as far as batting average. I think the USC pitchers need to throw strikes. Clemson is a team that will work the count. They'll foul one off. They'll waste a pitch and finally get a pitch they like to hit, or if not, they'll draw a walk. So I think Carolina's got to throw strikes, don't get behind in the counts and things like that. Third thing I think is a key for South Carolina is how are they going to do against better pitching? They've not exactly faced a lot of challenging pitchers so far, taking nothing away from those guys they've batted against. But the Clemson starting rotation and the bullpen are going to be the best pitchers Carolina's seen so far, and maybe some of the best they'll see all year. I mean, Aiden Kanak is a big-time pitcher, and the other guys in the staff are good too. I think it's going to be a key for South Carolina to show they can hit against better pitching. You know, they didn't really do much on offense about the first 6 or 7 games. Hit it about 253, something like that, and now they're up to about 304, but that was because of a really big outing against Gardner-Webb on Tuesday night. So that's a preview of the first weekend, our first big weekend as far as Clemson-Carolina rivalry going on. Lots of games. Again, all 33 state teams are in action. I hope you will follow my coverage at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. Also, I tweet a lot on X. My handle is Palmetto Base. As you can tell as I'm stumbling through this, I'm not a very erudite speaker. I do a lot better typing than talking, and I can't read a script either. So I got that going for me. But I do have coverage of all the state's teams at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. I hope you'll check it out. I'm trying to improve on the coverage. If you see something you want me to do differently, do better, let me know. My email address is rudyjones@PalmettoStateBaseball.com. And again, I'll be giving you updates throughout the weekend and more coverage online at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. This is Rudy Jones saying thanks and have a good night.